Hello my friends, I'm Panos and this is another video about the equipment I used this year. The band I play with tours all over Greece and Cyprus, playing in all sorts of stages, from tiny clubs and special home events to arenas and TV shows. Room on stage and minimum soundcheck time are often an issue, so I still use a rig based on an amp emulator. Whenever possible, I also have an amp on stage, and if it sounds good enough, I mic it with an SM57, so our mixing engineer can mix it to my DI sound. For more information about my way of thinking on guitar sounds in pop rock bands and about my previous rigs, have a look on this video. So, let's begin with the guitar I use. This was a 50th anniversary Fender American Deluxe Strat I bought in 2008. The last 3 years, I've heavily modified it to a point that the only original parts are the woods and the neck plate. In summary, I replaced the original locking tuners with a Fender Pew vintage set, the plastic nut with an unbleached bone one, and the original medium jumbo frets with a narrow tall Jescar 55 or 90. These are the Rocket Fire Total 60s pickup, a 3-way serial selector switch, two 50 kΩ audio taper CTA spots with a .068 microfarad paper in oil capacitor, and a treble bleed shaker. This bridge is a Fender 5762 6-screw bridge that replaced the original 2-point bridge. I recently replaced the original 6 screws with slightly fatter ones in order to improve the stability of the bridge and as a result the tuning stability when I use the tremolo bar. By the way, I now use plumber's tape to keep the bar fitting properly. Lastly, these are raw vintage springs and an Illich Electronics backplate which fully eliminates single coil hum, while as far as I can tell, it keeps the tone intact. For more info about how these modes affected the tone of the guitar, check out the previous rig rundowns. One important thing I changed since last year are the strings I use. It seems I have string destroying sweat, and despite using fast fret, the Ernie Ball 2221 dead them very quickly in my hands. I found out that the D'Addario 10s keep their sparkle for longer, so I switched to these strings. Another important change is this Belden 9778 cable that replaced the Mogami 2524 cable. It seems to me that the Mogami has a spike in the high mids that doesn't complement my Strat in the current setup. On the other hand, the Belden 9778 has a very smooth roll-off in the highs that makes my Strat sound sweeter but still clear. Okay, now let's move on to the interesting part, the pedal board. As I said before, I decided to take the line-in path, and since I exclusively use in-ear monitoring, I had to come up with a setup that would emulate an amp as good as possible. Space and weight are an issue, so I ended up with these two pedals on the side of the pedal board that I think emulate a tube amp very convincingly. This is a Kingsley Maiden PF, a tube preamplifier in a pedal format that replaced the Tech 21 British amp emulator. Maiden PF is inspired by the Fender Blackface design, so it's like plugging my pedal board into the front end of a classic Fender amp. As in a real amp, the next stage is the spring reverb. In this case, this Digitech Polara emulates exactly that. It also features an analog dry path, so the guitar signal never converts to digital until the torpedo cab, of course. The torpedo cab emulates the power amp section of the amp, and it's the host for the speaker impulse response. The power amp tubes I chose to emulate are the KT88 in push-pull topology, and for speaker emulation, I use an impulse by a third-party company named Ownhammer. The impulse I use these days is this one. It's a Chinese-made Celestion Vintage 30 in a 70s Marshall 1960B 4x12 cabinet, mic'd with a Ribbon Roger R121, a dynamic SM57, and a UMT 70S condenser mic. The torpedo cab also features a fixed parametric EQ and room reverb, which I turn off when playing in clubs with natural reverb. I connect it to the mixing desk via this passive JDI bar radio. Now, let me show you very quickly what these three pedals do. So, let's go back to the first pedal in the chain. This is an RMC 10 watt which replaced an RMC 4. The RMC4 is great with overdrive, but since I mainly use wah for clean funky rhythms, the RMC10 is more suitable as it's more transparent. The next pedal is this Wampler Tumnus, which as you may know, it's a clone center clone in a mini pedal format. It has one of the best buffers I've heard and it's a great booster as well. As you can see, the third pedal is a TC Electronic Polytune 2 Mini, which leads us to this custom true bypass dual looper by Crazy Tube Circuits that contains all the overdrives. After the switcher is the Strymon Time Line Delay. With this expression switch I designed in order to have a second preset for every patch. The left output of the timeline connects to the main, and the right connects to a real amp, if there's one. Now, let's see what's in the two loops of the switcher. In the left loop, there is only the Fijo by Himmelstruch, dialed as a low gain overdrive. I usually use it with a neck or middle pickup of my Strat. It gives a chime in the highs and tightens the bass. I power it with 12 volts instead of 9, as it sounds better to me this way. Now, with a push of a button, I can jump to any of the overdrive sounds in the right loop. First in this loop is this Moore Tedder Octaver, a micro-pop clone. Next is this Himmelstruch Feto Maximus, which serves as my main mid-gain overdrive, and I usually combine it with a bridge pickup. The left switch engages the overdrive, and the right one engages an independent clean booster before it. The booster is very transparent, so I also use it on its own as my clean sound. So, let's hear how some of these pedals sound. The next pedal in this loop is this Friedman Brown Eye, which serves as my main high-gain overdrive. When used for solos, I boost it with the clean side of the Feto for extra juice. After B overdrive is this Procorat, modded with an LM308 engine. I dial it as a fast distortion for thick power chords or in conjunction with the Tender Octaver for fat monophonic lines. Last in this loop is this Viagra Boost by Crazy Tube Circuits. It replaced a silicone booster from Jump Pedals called Boomster. I needed a more transparent booster to give some volume for the solos, so I ended up with this pedal that also has a foot switchable parametric EQ. It is dialed to give an extra smooth pump in the high mids in order to make my strats cut through the mix in the solos. Let's listen how these pedals sound. All pedals are powered with a G-Crick power supply system, except for the torpedo cab, which has its own PSU. You can find more about the power supply system, this multi-cable, the patch cables, the in-ear preamp system, buffers, and of course the lamp in the third part of the 2015 videos. Well, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.